So what is going on in Iran? We're seeing images of widespread protest. We're hearing about an economic collapse, and it seems like the entire nation is at a boiling point. Today, we're going to break it all down and get to the heart of why Iran is burning. And to really get a sense of just how serious this is, one of our sources put it this way: Iran is in big trouble. It looks to me that the people are taking over. That kind of statement, well, it really sets the stage for a nation that could be on the verge of some massive, massive change. So what does this big trouble actually look like on the ground? Well, right now it looks like a nation on fire. Iran is facing what might be the biggest challenge to its regime in years, all because of this huge wave of anti-government protests that are just sweeping across the country.
This whole thing didn't just explode out of nowhere as some grand political movement. It started much smaller. It began with demonstrations in the bazaars of Tehran, mostly about inflation. But that anger over the economy, it was like a spark, and it ignited this much, much bigger fire that's now spread across the entire nation. And, as you might expect, the government's response was fast. As these protests started picking up steam, they moved to shut down the internet. And this is a classic move, right? You want to stop a movement, you cut off their ability to communicate with each other and to get their story out to the rest of the world.
Which brings us to the big question. These protests, they're definitely political now, but the roots, they run so much deeper. They go right into the economic pain that people are feeling every single day. So what is it that's driving this level of raw desperation and anger? The answer, as it so often does, is in the numbers. And collapse is really the only word for it. The economic situation is just staggering. And when you look at the data behind all this unrest, it tells a pretty shocking story of why so many people feel like they have no other choice but to take to the streets. First, let's just talk about the currency. The Iranian rial absolutely cratered, hitting almost 1 million to a single US dollar. I mean, just try to imagine that for a second. Your salary, your life savings, all of it just effectively wiped out practically overnight. And if you thought that was bad, it got worse. And it got worse fast. Just a few days later, it plunged again to 1.42 million rials for $1. One source we looked at said the currency had completely gone through the floor. It was an economic freefall happening in real time. Now, on top of that currency crisis, you've got this: an official inflation rate of 42.2%. And remember, that's just the official number. It's not just a statistic. For millions of Iranians, it's a daily crisis that means the price of everything is just spiraling out of control. And this is where it all hits home. These aren't just abstract numbers on a screen. This is the human cost. We're talking about a situation where people can't afford the absolute basics anymore. Things like cooking oil, vegetables, they're becoming luxuries. That is the kind of desperation that sends people into the streets. So you have to ask yourself, how did it get this bad? How does a major energy-producing nation get to a point where its economy is in shambles and its currency is worthless? Well, this collapse wasn't sudden. It's a symptom of much deeper problems that have been building up for years and years. It really wasn't just one thing. It was a perfect storm of factors. Our sources point to severe international sanctions, for sure. But there were also major internal decisions. For instance, the government got rid of these special subsidized exchange rates that were used to import essential goods. As soon as they did that, the prices for food and medicine just shot through the roof. Then, you layer decades of corruption and just plain mismanagement on top of that, and you've got a recipe for a total disaster. And this right here is maybe the most mind-bending part of the whole story. On one hand, you have an energy superpower. I mean, Iran is sitting on 12% of the entire world's proven oil reserves, and yet its own people have had to deal with rationing for petrol and gas. That just screams deep, deep mismanagement. So, of course, when things get this intense, you know the rest of the world is going to start paying attention. A crisis this big doesn't happen in a vacuum. The international community is definitely watching, and that's raising the stakes even higher. And that attention comes with some very serious warnings. This quote from one source shows just how high those stakes are. It's a clear message. If the government's response turns deadly, the international reaction could be severe. They're vowing to hit them very, very hard where it hurts. And back on the ground in Iran, all that economic anger has now morphed into something else entirely. It's not just about the price of cooking oil anymore. People are openly calling for regime change. Some are even demanding the return of the exiled crown prince, Reza Pahlavi. And that leaves us right here.
with the ultimate unresolved question. You've got an economy in total ruins and a population that is demanding fundamental change. Iran is truly at a crossroads. So, will these protests eventually be crushed? Or are we watching the very beginning of a new chapter for Iran? Right now, nobody knows, but the whole world is watching to find out.